Hello and welcome to another episode of The Week Gone By. I'm Shafi Siddiqui and I'll give you a brief of all the news that has happened in South Asia and beyond in the last week. First up, updates from Nepal, where after a long stalemate, the country finally got their new Prime Minister. It was CPN-UML chairman Jalanath Khanal who was elected the new Prime Minister last week, ending the months-long deadlock over the election of a new Prime Minister.
माननीय सदस्य श्री झलनाथ खनाल नेपालको अन्तरिम संविधान 2063 को धारा 38 को धारा 2 बमोजिम नेपालको प्रधानमन्त्री पदमा निर्वाचित हुनुभएको घोषणा गर्नु।
CPN-UML chairman Jalanath Khanal is the 34th Prime Minister of Nepal and he is replacing his party leader Madhav Kumar Nepal, who resigned from the post of Prime Minister on June 30th last year following intense pressure from the UCP and Maoists. Khanal garnered 368 votes in the parliamentary election held at the Constituent Assembly building on Thursday evening. His rivals were Nepali Congress Parliamentary Party leader Ramchandra Paudel and Madheshi Janadhikari Forum Loktantrik, and they received 122 and 67 votes respectively. Khanal's victory was ensured after Maoist chairman Pushpa Kamal Dahal withdrew his candidacy right before the parliamentary session. Also, the international community hailed the successful parliamentary election that elected Jalanath Khanal as the new Prime Minister of Nepal, ending a 6-month-long status quo. The United Nations, India, the United States of America, the European Union and Japan, among others, welcomed the successful election and congratulated the newly elected Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Jalanath Khanal started the discreet homework to handpick his new cabinet by Sunday. While talking to the media, Khanal assured that his cabinet will be small and effective. He also underlined that his priority areas will be the ongoing peace process and drafting of a new constitution. The UML moreover urged all the other parties to help forge a broader national consensus in order to ensure peace and constitution in the country. A meeting of its standing committee led by Chairman and PM-elect Jalanath Khanal made the appeal, and it was later followed by UML leader Bamdev Gautam, who said that the party was making the appeal for an acceptable conclusion of the peace process and drafting of the constitution.
When on one hand the Nepal president came down to India and sought its support for the completion of the peace and constitution drafting process, India was busy with its own internal problems.
Naming the left-wing extremism, cross-border terrorism and religious fundamentalism as serious challenges facing the country, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh last week called for a constant vigil and said that the government was willing to consider the aspirations of any group if they genuinely desired peace. He made the statements while addressing a conference of chief ministers on internal security.
The problems in Orissa and Maharashtra are also quite serious. In the fight against left-wing extremism, there is a need to have much greater coordination of responses and resources between the central and state forces.
The Prime Minister also said that 2010 had witnessed a decrease in the number of violent incidents and casualties from left-wing extremists compared to previous years, but the casualties among civilians due to Maoist violence had increased.
The year 2010 saw a decrease over the previous year in the number of incident and casualty of security personnel, but the number of casualty among civilians increased. Chhattisgarh, Bihar, West Bengal and Jharkhand continue to be a cause of concern in view of the level of violence.
He moreover said that there was every reason for the country to be satisfied with no incident of a flare-up being reported. The Prime Minister also added that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, which witnessed violent protests last summer, had improved vastly in the last 4 months due to several measures taken by both the state and the central governments.
The summer of 2010 saw a troubled period in the state of Jammu and Kashmir in the form of protests, particularly by stone pelters. This form of agitation generated a vicious cycle of violence. It is very unfortunate and sad that despite tremendous restraint shown by the security forces, many young people died and more than 1,500 security personnel were injured. As we meet today, the situation in the valley has improved.
In another update, the Union Home Minister also underlined that India remains vulnerable to terrorism. Home Minister P. Chidambaram also said that new groups are suspected to be behind some terror attacks that took place in recent years.
We live in a troubled neighborhood. Some of our neighbors appear to be vulnerable not only to acts of terror but also to destabilizing political developments, the consequences of which affect India in one way or another.
Meanwhile, the unrest in Egypt has forced some Indian companies to temporarily shut down their manufacturing units as a precautionary measure, while some are still studying the possible impact. FMCG companies like Dabur India and Marico are to temporarily shut down their units, while others like Asian Paints are believed to be considering following suit if the trouble continues.
Now, as the Egypt crisis is slowly being felt across South Asia, Indian Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee has said that the government will take care of the impact of rising global crude oil prices, which are hovering around 2-year high due to the crisis in Egypt and other Arab countries. India, meanwhile, suggested subtly during the past week that President Hosni Mubarak should step down and pave the way for a regime change in Egypt. Indian External Affairs Minister S.M. Krishna, moreover, said that the people of Egypt are fairly clear in their thinking and in their action, and those who are ruling Egypt must see the writing on the wall. Also, amid reports that some foreign journalists covering political turmoil in Cairo have been attacked, the Indian External Affairs Ministry on Thursday issued an advisory for the scribes.
Assault on journalists from all over the world who had gathered to report about the developments in Egypt is certainly condemnable. It is an act against the freedom of the press, the freedom of the media, and India does not go along with the situation.
Even Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Ambika Soni, has condemned attack on journalists in Cairo. However, the minister did express hope that Egypt rulers will listen to the voice of the common man.
The whole situation is full of violence. People are standing in confrontation positions. The Aam Admi of Egypt, it seems to be on the road. And I always feel that the rulers must listen to the voice of the Aam Admi.
Meanwhile, the third batch of Indians who were caught in the violent unrest in Cairo reached Mumbai by a special ferry flight of Air India on Thursday. When questioned, they said that they decided to leave the country as the ATMs had run out of cash and there was a possibility of food supply shortage.
Now, Pakistan was in the grip of violence throughout the last week as bomb blasts and gunshots left numbers of people dead and injured. But however, Interior Minister Rahman Malik did say earlier in the week that he had discussed the issue with the DG Rangers in detail and added that the results have been achieved after empowering the Rangers with powers as that of the police at the request of the Sindh government.
A bomb blast killed a senior local police official in Peshawar after a bomber struck Rashid Khan's vehicle as he was patrolling on the outskirts of Peshawar. Rashid Khan was the Deputy Superintendent of Police for the southern Peshawar. Also on the same day, 6 people, including 4 police officers, were killed and 14 people wounded in 2 bomb blasts in Pakistan's northwest. The first blast was detonated by a teenage suicide bomber, and the suicide attack killed 5 people and left 11 injured. Pakistani Taliban claimed responsibility, saying it targeted the police in Peshawar. Also, a driver was killed and a cleaner sustained bullet injuries in an attack on NATO oil tanker in the Dasht area of Mastoon on Tuesday. Reportedly, the tanker carrying fuel for International Security Assistance Force was en route to Afghanistan from Karachi when armed men opened indiscriminate fire at the vehicle in the Dasht region. Moreover, at least 9 people were killed and several others have been injured in a blast in Peshawar on Wednesday. The police said that the blast had occurred in a vehicle in the Tilaband area of Peshawar. Security forces cordoned off the area immediately after the blast. Also on Thursday, gunmen attacked 2 NATO tankers on the highway between Chaman and Quetta near the Afghan border, killing a driver and injuring another. Reports suggested that the armed men first signaled the drivers to stop and then their assailants opened fire at them, killing one of them on the spot, whereas the assistant of driver sustained injuries. Just at the end of the week, a man was also killed and 24 others were injured when a low-intensity bomb exploded outside the Haider Sain Bar near the General Bus Stand. It was a busy day at the shrine and a large number of devotees had gathered there to pay respects to the Sufi saint.
And time now to check out updates from Sri Lanka. The country celebrated its 63rd Independence Day with great pomp and pageantry last week in the sacred city of Karadagama in southern province under the patronage of President Mahinda Rajapaksa. The opening of the Independence Day celebrations began with the hoisting of the national flag, and it was followed by parades of the Sri Lankan Army, Navy Air Force, the police and the civil defence forces. Stressing the need for a law-abiding society, the President said that all these hard-won battles will not make freedom meaningful in the absence of law-abiding society. Now in Bangladesh, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said last week that the new airport will be built on the other bank of the Padma River as the government has scrapped its plan to construct in Munshiganj. She also cited examples of Thailand, Singapore and Malaysia and said that a new airport of international standard is a must to build a developed and prosperous Bangladesh by 2021.
The decision was taken following massive protests by villagers who were afraid of losing their lands due to the project. A police sub-inspector was also killed and more than 100 people were injured on Monday's clashes in Munshiganj. The Prime Minister moreover added that the decision was meant to show respect to the wishes of the leader of the opposition as well as to the locals who believed that they would be adversely affected. BNP chairperson Khalida Zia also demanded last week that the airport construction at Ariel Beal in Munshiganj should be scrapped. She was speaking at a meeting on Tuesday when she said that Dhaka already has an international airport of which only 27% is being used and that there is no need for another airport. Khalida also reiterated her solidarity with the local people in the Beal area, saying that BNP has always been with the people and will be there in the future.
We will now wrap up this edition of the Week Gone By here. I will be back next week again with more news and updates from across South Asia. Till then, goodbye and keep watching TV South Asia.